In this video, I'm going to go over general security and show you different options you can change in the operating system to make it more secure. So in Linux, it's always a good recommendation to disable RDP or remote desktop. This allows other people to connect to your computer and treat it like it's theirs from wherever they are. So the way we disable RDP is we go to the search bar, then we'll look up desktop share, and it would look like this. Once you open it, you just want to disable the first option. Allow other users to view your desktop. Once you turn that off, people can't connect to your computer using traditional remote desktop tools. Right. So a good example would be things like TeamViewer or Show My PC, where a computer technician could connect to your computer and look at your desktop and try figuring out a problem. The next thing we'll go over is an antivirus or an anti-malware tool. These are programs that will scan the computer and find out if there's any infected files on the computer and delete them or quarantine them. But with Linux, viruses and malware aren't really targeted towards Linux computers, more towards Windows computers. That's why having an antivirus tool isn't that common, but it's always a good measure to take if you're worried about the computer. So the main antivirus tool in Linux is ClamAV/TK. AV is a terminal side of the program and TK is the GUI side. So it's recommended use the TK side, but the way we would install Clam in general is we would open the terminal, go into sudo, then we would want to install ClamAV. Yes. Now once this is installed, we'll have the terminal side of Clam, but that's difficult to use if you don't know the commands. That's why there is a GUI side, which is instead of AV, we just replace it with TK. And hit yes. You need ClamAV before you can install ClamTK, since ClamAV is the foundation. But once ClamTK is done installing, we can go type in ClamTK in the search bar, and we can open it. And here is our anti-malware antivirus tool. Now it's a very simple program to use. Just you want to scan a directory, choose the directory you want to scan, and click OK, and it'll just start the scan. Now, once again, viruses aren't really targeted towards Linux, so usually you will not find any infected files or viruses in the system. So this is a thing you would do if you are really worried that your computer has a virus. But other than that, it's not that common to install these programs. So it says scan is complete, no threats found. That's about it for antiviruses. ClamAV and TK is the recommended program to use in Linux though. Next, we're going to go over the firewall. The firewall is a really big thing in the system, but it's very simple to set up. So we're going to use the terminal mainly for the firewall because we have a lot more options and configurations we can do through the terminal instead of using a GUI tool. Now, configuring the firewall through the terminal, you always want to start off a command using UFW. And you also want to make sure you're in sudo first. So you start a command in the firewall using UFW. Now, if you want to check if it's on, we're going to do UFW status. Right now, it's inactive. It's not on, and to turn it on, we would do UFW enable. Firewall is active enabled on system startup. Now that's enabled, if we do a status, it tells us it's active. So we know the firewall is active and it's on system startup. But now we want to make sure that the incoming connections and the outgoing connections are configured correctly. Usually when you turn on the firewall, the outgoing and incoming connections will already be set up correctly with the rules deny, allow, or reject. But you always want to try configuring it yourself so you are actually sure that it is configured correctly. So the way we would edit the incoming and outgoing connections is through UFW default and then the next part is either your deny slash allow or your reject. Which one you want to set for this one? Right now we're going to set the incoming connection. So for incoming, you want to leave it at deny. So UFW default deny incoming connections. This is telling the firewall that any incoming connection by default, deny that request. So if we click enter, now it has changed the policy to deny. Now we're going to set up the outgoing connection. So it's the same process, UFW default, and instead of deny, we want to allow our local internet to send connections outside. So we're going to allow it, and then this will be outgoing connections. By default, any connections leaving our local internet and going out to the public should be allowed, so it has changed the policy to allow. Now that we set up our basic firewall rules, I'm going to show you how to set up specific made rules or custom rules. So if you want to port forward or deny a specific program, this is the way we would do it. So if we do a UFW status, the status is active and that's all it tells us. Now, earlier in the video we disabled RDP or screen sharing, but it's always a good rule to deny the port itself through the firewall. So if somehow they get past the basic rule to not allow any connections, the firewall will deny all packets with the tag of RDP or the port number 3389. It's a safe way to make sure people can't connect to your computer using RDP. So the way we create a deny rule is UFW deny the port number, which is 3389 for RDP, and then the type of protocol it's using. So TCP slash UDP. So right now we're just going to use TCP, and now it says rule added and rule added v6. This is telling us rule added for IPv4 and rule added for IPv6. So when you add a rule, it will create a rule for both types of internet IP addresses. Now if you do a UFW status, it will tell us if the firewall is on or off, which is on, and it will show you all the rules we've created. So 3389 TCP, deny from anywhere. Now let's create a allow rule. So UFW allow, and we're going to allow SSH, but we're not going to do the port number this time. This time we're just going to type in SSH slash TCP. Now the firewall, when creating rule, can do name resolution, but you shouldn't try to do name resolution. It'll work, so the rule added, and if we do a UFW status, port 22 is allow anywhere. But the way the firewall will get the port number with the name is through a file called etc/services. This is where all the port numbers are linked to a name, and where different programs will figure out what type of connection is trying. So here we have SSH is linked to port 22. Now, if this file was poisoned and someone changed this port to 300 and saved it, and this time we try to add a rule called UFW allow SSH, and we click enter this time, and we do a status, this time will say port 300 was added. Now it will say port 300 was now added to the firewall rules to allow. So that's why this could be really dangerous sometimes. Someone who can manipulate the etc services file could poison your computer and allow their own connections to go through and you wouldn't even know. That's why it's always a good rule to use port numbers instead of names. Let's say we wanted to delete a rule and we don't want this 300 rule anymore. What we would do is UFW delete what's it doing, which is allowing, and the port number with the protocol. So it says rule deleted, and if we do a UFW status now, it's not there. So another way you can delete firewall rules if you can't remember this command right here is through a command UFW status numbered. This will number all the rules depending on how many you have, and the way we would remove them is UFW delete and the number. So I don't want number 2 anymore. Do you want to delete it? Yes. Now that's deleted. If we do a UFW status number or a UFW status normal, our rules, the rule we just had, 22/TCP, is not there. We just have TCP v6. Now, whenever you're done configuring the firewall, always reload the firewall or restart the firewall so you can save the changes and it won't be corrupted. So you want to do UFW reload to reset the firewall, and once you're done with that, just do a UFW status to make sure it's on, and you're all good from there. That's it for general security. Always remember to disable RDP if you don't need it through the desktop sharing tool. Enable the firewall using UFW enable, and that anti-malware and antivirus tools are not common or needed on Linux unless you are very certain that there is a virus or an infected file on the computer.